A hostel, a resting stop for the curious, a place where small stories begin with a soft hallway greeting, a dim light at midnight, or the creak of a bunk bed. Everything there seems harmless, until you open your eyes in the middle of the night and realize something is watching. In today's video, we recount 3 true stories from travelers who seemed carefree until they faced moments of sheer terror. A young man in Paris wakes up at night to find a face hanging upside down from the top bunk, staring at him in the dark. Another guest in Rome discovers that 2 of his roommates aren't actual tenants and narrowly avoids being chloroformed in his sleep. And a girl in Miami loses her phone, only to realize the thief took it and had been following her all day, snapping photos of her while she slept. 3 continents, 3 bedrooms, one thing in common: the real fear begins after the lights go out. If you're into real-life horror stories like these, don't forget to subscribe. It's the best way to support us and help us continue sharing stories that'll make your skin crawl. Every subscription is a huge gift, and we're truly grateful. So put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and step into rooms you'll never want to sleep in alone. Paris greeted him with the early morning chill and the throbbing ache of sleep deprivation. After a 7-hour flight from the US, a 6-hour time difference, and a suffocatingly cramped seat, he, a 23-year-old freshly out of a bad breakup, was little more than a zombie dragging a suitcase. He hadn't come to Paris for sightseeing. His purpose was a French girl he had met on a dating app, someone he had chatted with almost every night for the past 2 months. There was something about her that made him trust her, even though they had never met in person. She was upfront. Because she lived with strict parents, he couldn't stay at her place, and maybe we shouldn't spend the first few nights together. He agreed. All he needed now was a bed. The hostel he chose wasn't listed on any best places to stay in Paris guides. It was tucked into a narrow alleyway, its faded sign flickering under a dying bulb. The receptionist, half asleep, slid the key across the counter without even glancing up. The hallway to the dorm was long and damp, the wooden floor creaking beneath each step. His room had 6 beds. 5 were empty. 1 was occupied. The occupant, a man in his 30s, sat in a corner bed, the glow of his laptop casting a sickly blue onto his pale cheek. He didn't look up when the traveler entered, nor did he respond to his greeting. The young man hesitated, then chose an empty bed near the door. The ceiling light was still on. He turned and asked quietly, "Is it okay if I turn off the light?" The man looked up. His eyes were hollow and vacant, as if they saw through flesh. A twisted smile crept across his lips, not friendly, but as if carved by a blade. No words, just a nod, very slow. The young man stepped over and turned off the light. The room went dark, silent, and cold. Outside, it was Paris, the city of light. But inside that room, he began to feel something was off. After the light was switched off, the room fell into silence, the kind so complete it felt like even sound was afraid to exist. He pulled the blanket up to his chest, eyes closed, body drained. The old bed creaked under his weight, but exhaustion from the long flight took over within minutes. The room was pitch black, lit only by the faint glow of streetlights bleeding through a dusty window crack. The strange man, the only other person in the room, made no sound, no typing, no breathing, as if he'd melted into the darkness. But just a few hours later, the traveler jolted awake. A strange feeling gripped his chest. Not a sound exactly, but a presence. like someone was watching. He rolled over, blinking into the dark. The first thing he noticed was that all the beds around him were empty. Top bunk, bottom bunk, across the room. No one. Unless someone was hiding. A chill ran down his spine. He glanced up at the top bunk, only a few feet above. He was about to look away, convince himself the guy had stepped out for a smoke, when a faint sound rang out. Clink. Metal tapping the bed frame. Then a breath, slow, deep, and heavy, coming from above, very close. His eyes flew open. He lifted his head, and his heart nearly stopped. From the edge of the top bunk, a face hung upside down, as if someone had draped themselves over the edge to stare down. Wet black hair dangled like vines. The eyes were wide open, and the mouth twisted in a grotesque smile that defied description. No words, no movement, just watching. He screamed, scrambled back, tripping over his backpack and crashing to the floor. The man didn't jump down. He simply sat up, slowly, the same horrifying grin frozen on his waxy white face. "Are you insane?" the traveler shouted, throwing a pillow at him. The man laughed, a small, warped laugh echoing in the room like a distorted recording. Then he pulled out his phone, raised it, clicked, the sound of a picture being taken. He had just photographed the traveler. Shaking with anger and fear, the young man got to his feet, eyes locked on the stranger, refusing to turn his back. He packed quickly. The man kept smiling, like he was enjoying some twisted game only he understood. The traveler didn't know what was worse, being watched in the middle of the night, or knowing that now his image lived inside the phone of someone like that. He ran like his legs no longer belonged to him. Leaving the room behind, he bolted down the hostel's narrow hallway, the ceiling bulbs flickering as if someone was playing a countdown game. His heart pounded, throat tight with a mix of rage and fear he had never known before. The image of that upside-down face still burned in his mind. And worse than that, the click of the camera. No one wants to be photographed while sleeping, but what made his skin crawl was the man's gaze, not curious, but collecting, as if he were just another specimen, one more entry in a gallery curated through sleepless, unseen nights. At the front desk, he slammed his hand on the counter. The receptionist had changed shifts, a younger guy, eyes glued to his phone. "I need to change rooms. Immediately," he panted. "There's a guy in mine. He's not right. He took a photo of me while I was sleeping. When I woke up, he was hanging his head down, watching me." The receptionist looked up, frowning, not out of concern but confusion. The young man recounted everything, rapid and shaken. After a few moments of hesitation, the staff agreed to move him to a private room, not out of empathy, but because his voice was disturbing the other guests. He asked for a discount due to the incident. They refused. He didn't care. All he wanted was a door with a lock. In the new room, small, cramped, but at least private, he locked everything. Deadbolt, curtains drawn, suitcase shoved against the door like a reflex. Then he opened his laptop, pulled up his email, logged into the hostel's review platform, and began typing. The words poured out: unsafe, suspicious behavior, threatening presence. He should not be allowed to share a room with anyone. Just as he was about to hit submit, a notification appeared on his phone. You were tagged in a photo. His heart stopped. He tapped it, but the image didn't load. The user account was gone. He sat frozen for a few seconds, then rushed to check all his social media. Nothing. The account had vanished, but he knew. The photo had been posted, and the man might still have copies. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat with his back against the wall, eyes fixed on the door. Every sound made him jump. There was no rest, no peace. Outside, Paris still sparkled, but he was beginning to understand. There are faces the city lights never touch, and some people don't need weapons, just a smile. He never called the police, partly because there was no proof the man had done anything legally wrong, and partly because he just wanted to forget. Forget that smile. Forget the face hanging from the top bunk. Forget the glow of the phone screen when the picture was taken. But memories don't erase like image files. They return in the dark corners of his bedroom, in the blurred moments between dreams, or when he sees someone smile too long without blinking. For the rest of his stay in Paris, he tried to act normal, met the girl, saw a few sights, smiled in some photos. But always, in the back of his mind, one question lingered. What if he didn't take the photo just to keep it? What if he did something with it? Edited, shared, tracked? Every time he returned to the hostel, he moved quickly, avoided crowded hallways, avoided eye contact, avoided every door that was slightly ajar. He never saw the man again. And that was the worst part. The man no longer existed in the hostel system. No name, no photo, as if he'd never been there. He left Paris with a lighter bag and an invisible weight hanging at the back of his neck. Every trip after that, he booked hotels, double-locked doors, slept with the nightlight on. Friends asked, "Why do you always face the door when you sleep?" He would just smile. Easier to breathe. And in his mind, that dry, broken laugh still echoed, along with those unblinking eyes staring through the dark. Not all fears need knives. Some only need a bunk bed and a stranger. Rome is a city as beautiful as a painting, but he didn't come to admire art. He, a solo backpacker with a worn-out pack and shoes that had walked 1,000 miles, just needed a place to crash. Freedom Traveler Hostel, with a name that sounded like a promise, popped up first when he searched for the cheapest stay near the center. By the time he arrived, he was exhausted. On the map, the place was supposed to be 5 minutes from the train station, but his terrible sense of direction and the hostel's lack of signage turned it into a half hour of wandering alleys paved in old stone. When he finally found it, he stood in front of a heavy wooden door, its paint peeling. No sign, just a small buzzer bolted to the wall. The receptionist, a tired but pleasant woman, greeted him with a weary smile. She led him down a mossy hallway to room number 4. A tiny room painted pale green, with one bunk bed and 2 single beds packed tightly together like there wasn't enough air to go around. "Not many guests," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You'll have more space." He smiled. All he cared about was a locked door and clean sheets. She pointed to a garden shed in the back where he could store his luggage, but he declined. There was no trusting a shack made of rotting wood. He shoved everything under his bed, changed shirts, and collapsed onto the single bed. A quick nap before exploring Rome. Just a short nap, only he never fell asleep. A knock shattered the silence. 2 men stepped inside. Brothers, according to their introduction. Marco, tall like a pillar. Lucio, smiling like he knew a secret you weren't supposed to find out. He greeted them politely. They chatted, laughed, then switched to Italian, assuming he didn't understand. But he did. Marco and Lucio spoke freely in Italian, as if they were just another piece of furniture with no ears. They didn't know he had studied Italian for 3 years in college, not enough to write an essay, but more than enough to know when someone was calling him a blatant idiot. Marco chuckled, glancing toward his bed. Lo strano ragazzo americano. The weird American kid. Lucio shrugged, smiling as he added, looks easy to trick. He lay still, eyes closed, pretending to sleep, but every muscle was tight. It felt like walking into a play where the script was already written, and he wasn't the director. After a few minutes, the two men stood up and left. Lucio waved, grinning like an old friend, but he didn't wave back. Instead, he sat up, scanning the room, and noticed a crucial detail. There were no suitcases, no backpacks, no belongings aside from his own. They were here, but not to stay. Around 7 p.m., he returned after a lazy evening of pizza and sunset watching at the piazza. The hostel's back garden was emptier than before. He double-checked his things, secured them better, and then climbed into bed, trying to sleep early. 9 o'clock. The room is dark. He didn't know how long he had been asleep before he woke with a start to the sound of whispers. Very faint, in Italian, coming from the corner of the room. Marco and Lucio were back, and talking about him. Just take it already. What are you waiting for? He held his breath. Were they talking about his bag? Or about him? He tried to move, but at that moment, a sharp chemical smell hit his face. Cold, damp, with the sting of alcohol or medicine. Something wet and cool pressed down against his face. A cloth? A rag? A gloved hand? He reacted instantly, thrashing and yelling. One of them was on top of him, holding him down, but not strong enough. He kicked the man in the chest, knocked the cloth aside, and screamed, "Get the hell off me!" Lucio, or Marco, yanked the other one up. The two of them bolted out of the room like rats caught in a spotlight. He flicked on the light, shaking, grabbed his backpack, and ran to the front desk. A new staff member was on duty. When he explained everything, the man simply replied, "They're not listed as guests tonight." Who were they? No one knew. All they knew was this: if he hadn't woken up in time, someone would have found an empty room the next morning, and an empty bed, and he might have vanished, as if he had never existed. And every word they had spoken that night made his skin crawl. He sat at the reception desk, trembling, clutching the cup of water the staff had handed him. His fingers still reeked of chemicals, that cold, wet solution soaked into the cloth that had just been pressed against his face. He didn't need to be an expert to recognize it. The scent of chloroform, the smell of abductions in movies, the smell of something meant to turn you into a corpse that could still walk. The receptionist, whose name was Enzo, checked the guest list. No Marco, no Lucio, no names matching any reservation for the day. Maybe they were just visiting someone, Enzo said, in a tone so calm it was almost offensive. No, he nearly shouted. They weren't visiting anyone. They had no luggage. They tried to smother me. They tried to knock me out. Enzo frowned. Do you want to call the police? He glanced at the clock. Nearly midnight. Rome at night wasn't the same as Rome by day. Everything quieter, darker. And if those two were still nearby... There's no proof, he said, shaking his head. They'll disappear before anyone gets here. He asked to leave the hostel that night, but Enzo said no refunds, no rides arranged. He understood, and chose to rent a private room instead, on the top floor. He locked every bolt, dragged his suitcase against the door. That night, he didn't sleep. The light stayed on. A metal rod clutched in hand, eyes fixed on the door. Every footstep in the hallway, every creak from the ceiling made him shoot upright. At 3 a.m., he heard knocking, very soft, at his door. 1, 2, 3 knocks. No voice followed, no apology, no explanation. Just those knocks, like someone testing to see if anyone was inside. He held his breath, didn't respond. Then came footsteps, fading, light but distinct. Not the shuffling of a drunk guest, not the clack of a night porter, but someone who knew they shouldn't be there. The next morning, as he packed up and returned the key, Enzo said, "You're the first guest to ever complain. No one else has had trouble like this." He stared at him, then replied, "Maybe they didn't survive to tell it." And as he walked out of the hostel, a chill crept down his spine. It wasn't the weather, it was the knowing. Some people don't sleep in hostels. They hunt. And all it takes is one careless guest, one deep sleep, one unlocked door, for them to find their next victim. He left Rome the next morning on the earliest train, never looking back. It felt like escaping a trap, a place where just breathing too loudly might wake something lurking in the dark. No one knew who Marco and Lucio were. No ID, no records, no hallway cameras. When he posted a warning review about what happened, the hostel's only response was, "We have no record of any serious incidents." As if he'd made it all up. As if he was just another paranoid, troublesome guest. But he knew better. He remembered the look in Lucio's eyes when he waved goodbye from the room. That polite smile barely concealing something pitch black underneath. He remembered the feel of the damp cloth pressed against his face, the air turning thick and heavy, like drowning in silence. And most of all, he remembered the knock at 3 a.m. Not desperate, not frantic, but checking, like someone picking their next target. Since that trip, he has never stayed in hostels again. No matter how cheap, how convenient, or how many friends invited him along, he always booked hotels or private rooms. Places with security cameras, triple locks, and night staff who knew their guests by name. Sometimes, curled up in a brightly lit hotel room in some other city, he still thought about that night. About those two nameless Italian men. About the people who might never have woken up after breathing too deeply. Some people don't come to hostels to sleep. They come to wait. And if you're lucky, you'll just lose your stuff. If not, you'll become a space on a bed. She came to Miami with a simple wish: warmth, art, and a temporary escape from Boston's freezing winter. Her friend Mia and her boyfriend had their plans, and all she needed was a place to sleep. Not a luxury hotel, and not an overpriced Airbnb during festival season. So she booked a bed at a place with a cheerful name, Bikini Hostel. From the moment she walked in, something felt off compared to the online photos. The place was cluttered, people constantly coming and going, loud music thumping from the bar next door, blending with the sound of rolling suitcase wheels scraping cracked tile floors. But she shrugged it off. All she needed was a bed, a locker, and a few hours of sleep between the busy Art Basel schedule. She was placed in a mixed dorm, co-ed. A little strange, but not concerning. This was Miami, after all. Open, vibrant, no stranger to shared spaces. The room had 8 beds. When she walked in, only 3 were occupied, all by men in their early 30s, none particularly talkative. One of them glanced at her from the opposite bed, but didn't smile. Just a long, heavy look, like he was trying to memorize her face. She didn't think much of it. Stored her belongings, offered a polite hello, and left soon after. The rest of the day was spent with Mia, exhibits, cafes, and photos. Everything felt normal, until the next morning, when she woke up and reached for her phone and realized it was gone. No phone on the pillow, not under the bed, not in her bag, not in the locker, She tore the room apart, asked everyone. Every look she got in return was indifferent, except for one, the man from the night before, who didn't look at her. He lay still, eyes closed, but his breathing was steady, like he was listening. She flipped pillows, blankets, bags, and even the metal locker she had locked the night before. No sign. The iPhone had vanished as if it had never existed. At first, she thought she was being forgetful. Maybe left it somewhere, maybe even dropped it. But she remembered clearly. She had messaged Mia just before falling asleep. It had been there. She asked her roommates. 3 strangers, 2 lying in bed, 1 brushing his teeth. Their responses were disinterested head shakes, blank stares. Only he, the man who had stared at her, didn't reply. He remained still, eyes shut, breathing too steady. She asked one of the guys to call her number. No ringtone, no vibration, no signal. A chill crept down her spine. She borrowed someone's phone to call Mia, letting her know the phone was gone. They agreed to meet at a brunch spot on Collins Avenue. After reporting the theft to the hostel front desk, she left, trying to stay calm, not let the incident ruin a beautiful Miami day. At the restaurant, she borrowed Mia's phone to log into iCloud. Find My iPhone showed its last known location, right at the hostel, 2 hours ago. She breathed a little easier. Maybe it was just misplaced in someone's bag. Maybe someone took it by accident. She and Mia returned and searched again. Bags, lockers, asked staff, still nothing. The strange part, the phone's location didn't change until that afternoon. While they were walking through the Art Basel exhibit, Mia opened her phone and refreshed Find My iPhone. She tilted the screen toward her. The location had changed. The phone was nearby, very close. She looked around at the crowd. Tourists, artists, students. Everyone is lost in their world. But in that moment, she felt it. Someone's eyes on her. From a shadowy corner, a short man in a gray hoodie was staring directly at her. When their eyes met, he turned away. But as he moved, so did the dot on the map, following his path. She swallowed hard and whispered, "He has my phone." Mia and her boyfriend took off after him, shouting, "Did anyone find a phone?" The man picked up speed, vanished into the crowd. She stood frozen, heart pounding. Someone hadn't just taken her phone. He had brought it with him, right to where she stood. After the failed encounter at Art Basel, they returned to the hostel on high alert. She tried to reassure herself. Maybe he just happened to be there. Maybe it wasn't him. But the iPhone kept updating its location, and this time, it had returned to the hostel. She was almost certain. The thief was back. She entered the room, looked around. 2 strangers sat silently on their beds. The man in the gray hoodie wasn't there. Feeling a bit more at ease, she locked the door, opened her laptop, and messaged Mia. "Call my phone." At that moment, the phone was still on in lost mode, which she had activated earlier. A minute later, silence. Then, a faint vibration. The buzzing of a phone. Not loud, but enough for her, and the 2 others in the room, to hear it. She turned. A man had just entered. It was him. The man in the hoodie. He looked at her with vacant eyes, not surprised at all. She screamed, "Give me back my phone." He remained silent, clutching his backpack. She stepped forward, and the other 2 in the room, initially hesitant, sprang into action. One of them, a guy named Paolo, stood up, blocking the man. "He's got your phone?" She nodded, voice shaky with anger. "He's been following me all day. My phone just buzzed from his bag." Mark, the second guy, shot a glance at the man. "Open the bag, now." The hoodie guy stood still for a few seconds. didn't speak, didn't resist. Then, as if he knew the game was up, he removed the backpack and unzipped it. On top, in plain view, was her familiar iPhone with a wallpaper of her and Mia taken just a week ago. She snatched the phone, tears welling up, unsure if from fear or rage. "Why?" she asked. But the man just turned, bolted out of the room, and vanished down the hallway like a nameless ghost. No one chased him. No one knew who he was. He wasn't registered. No name, no bed number, no documents. A man quietly living among strangers, waiting for the right moment to take something or someone. And this time, he had failed. But the question lingered. What had he done with her phone during those 2 days? And what had he photographed? She sat silently in her private room at the hostel, phone in hand, but didn't turn on the screen. She had it back, yes. But now, the scariest part wasn't that it had been stolen. It was what it might have captured. With trembling fingers, she unlocked the phone and opened the photo gallery. There were selfies of her, in the dorm room while she slept. Some were blurry, taken in the dark from above. A few were snapped through the hallway, through the crack in the door. One photo made her heart nearly stop. She was lying on her side, hair loose, and in the mirror behind her, his face faintly reflected. He had been standing right behind her at that moment. She deleted everything, reset the phone, changed all her passwords, but the images were etched in her memory. For the following nights, she couldn't sleep peacefully, always facing the door, always keeping a nightlight on. Anyone who entered the room, she memorized their face, logged their bed number, counted their footsteps. Mia and her boyfriend tried to comfort her, saying she just encountered a sick creep. But she knew it wasn't just a thief. He had watched, waited, chosen, not for money, but for something else, a craving, a twisted game where victims never realize they've been marked until they open their eyes in the dead of night and see the soft flash of a camera from the foot of their bed. She never returned to the hostels, never left her belongings where hands could reach, never trusted polite dorm room smiles again. And even now, every time she hears a phone vibrate in the dark, she still jolts, because in that split second, her heart still whispers, "He's come back." Three stories, three seemingly ordinary trips, but all led to the same place, an unnamed fear lurking in the darkness of unfamiliar rooms. Whether you're a wanderer, a budget hunter, or simply someone who loves spontaneous adventures, remember this. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't out on the streets, but lying just an arm's length away from you. If these stories made your heart race, your palms sweat, or simply made you hesitate to turn off the lights after watching, don't hesitate to hit like, so we know you're here, listening. And if you've ever had a strange experience at a hostel, hotel, or anywhere else, share it in the comments below, because maybe you're not the only one. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any real horror stories in the future. Every subscription is a pat on the back, a message that you're walking with us on a journey to uncover the dark side of places that seem perfectly harmless. We'll see you in the nights to come. And remember, never go to sleep without locking the door.